Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something, well, pretty unique. We're diving into two completely separate but equally powerful bodies of work that a listener shared. Two distinct realities.
That's right. It's quite the undertaking. The listener gave us two narratives that honestly couldn't be more different in their focus, but both really push you to question, well, everything.
Exactly. So our mission today is clear. Treat these as two independent case studies. They stand alone.
Absolutely. One is outward-looking, the other inward.
First up, there's ZerOwOrk. This is a massive, incredibly detailed story, a meta plot, really about a global cyber revolution, societal breakdown, reality hacking, the works.
And then completely separate from that, we have Day and Night Me, Past and Future Me. This one's described as a speculative short story, super personal, psychological, exploring fragmentation, consciousness. What happens when the mind fractures.
Right. And it's really, really crucial we keep stressing this. These two stories, unrelated. Different themes, different settings, different characters, different outcomes. Nothing connects them except that we're looking at them both today.
Think of them as separate works. Maybe creative writing, maybe biographical, maybe pure fiction. One examines external control systems, the other the internal landscape of the self.
Okay, let's start with the big one.
Yeah.
ZerOwOrk.
To really get ZerOwOrk, you have to understand the world it supposedly emerged from. The sources point to a really specific moment around 2012, an inflection point.
And this wasn't just things getting a bit worse, right? The material suggests something more dramatic.
Oh, absolutely. Like a phase transition, a sudden sharp acceleration into social fragmentation. Chaos, basically.
What's fascinating, or maybe alarming, is the paradox they describe. 2012. You'd think. Peak connectivity, right?
Exactly. Technically, we're building this incredible global nervous system. Mobile phones were everywhere. I mean, the sources say penetration was over 100% in 4 out of 6 world regions.
Everyone's connected.
But at the same time, social cohesion, trust in institutions, trust in each other, just falling off a cliff, accelerating downwards.
And there's data in the sources for this. Effective polarization, basically. How much opposing groups dislike each other.
Yeah, the numbers are stark. Back in, 1978, the gap was maybe 22 degrees. By 2012, over 40 degrees, almost doubled.
So it wasn't just disagreeing on policy.
No, it was deeper. It was feeling like people on the other side were, well, bad, morally suspect, maybe even dangerous. That kind of division makes any kind of cooperation impossible.
It fuels the fire.
Precisely. And think about the information landscape. It completely mirrored this breakdown.
The fact-checking explosion.
Right. The need for it just skyrocketed. Stories needing correction in U.S. media jumped 300% between 2008 and 2012.
Wow.
And the number of actual fact-checking groups. Globally, up nearly 700% by 2021. It's like the system was producing noise and confusion way faster than anyone could clean it up.
A sign the signal was getting lost.
Totally. And the sources are pretty blunt about the cause. This wasn't accidental decay. It was driven by platform choices.
Algorithms.
Engagement-maximizing algorithms designed to hook you, keep you scrolling. And what hooks people, often it's conflict, outrage, sensationalism.
Because that means more clicks, more ad revenue.
Bingo. So profit was prioritized over, a healthy society, over shared understanding. And according to the ZerOwOrk narrative, their radical intervention wasn't just an option, it became a necessity because shared reality itself was collapsing under this profit motive.
Okay, so that's the chaotic backdrop. Now let's dig into ZerOwOrk itself, its roots, its ideas. This wasn't just random hacking. It seems incredibly thought out.
Oh, deeply theoretical. They draw on some pretty radical thinkers, actually. Mid-20th century stuff, like the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit, CCRU, and also this older idea from the 70s, ZerOwOrk.
ZerOwOrk, what's that about?
It came out of North America and Italy. Originally, it was aimed at industrial work, alienated factory labor. The core demand was revolutionary for its time, free time as a right.
Meaning automation shouldn't just create unemployment, it should create leisure.
Exactly. If machines do the work, we should get the time. ZerOwOrk basically takes that idea and applies it to our digital age. They look at all of society as a kind of social factory.
A social factory, meaning everything we do online, every click, every post, every search,
is essentially unpaid labor. You're generating data, training algorithms, creating value for these massive platforms, and getting, nothing tangible back for that specific labor.
So we're all working in this factory without realizing it.
That's the argument. And so for ZerOwOrk, the ultimate act of resistance, the ultimate political strike, becomes the refusal of work.
How does it work in a social factory? You just log off.
It's more fundamental than that. It's about disrupting the system that extracts that value. It's like cybernetic jujitsu, using the system's own logic, its own interconnectedness against itself.
Okay. And they had a specific tool for this disruption. This is where it gets really strange, right?
This is where it gets really strange. Their primary weapon, their core methodology, is something called hyperstition.
Hyperstition. Okay, break that down. What is it?
It's a tricky concept. Basically, think of it as a fiction that makes itself real. It's an idea, a narrative, a belief system that once it starts spreading and people act on it, actually changes reality to conform to the fiction.
So it's not just predicting the future.
No, it's creating the future by injecting a fictional version of it into the present. The sources say it creates time loops where the future they predict impacts back on the present. It's reality bending through narrative.
Wow. Okay, and their whole look and feel, the visuals, the sound that was part of this?
Absolutely central.
Yeah.
The glitch art, that weird fractured Zero logo everyone remembers, the mysterious voice doing the broadcasts.
The one that blended famous historical voices.
Yeah. According to the sources, these weren't just like cool branding. They were designed as functional sigils.
Sigils, like magic symbols.
In a functional sense, yes. Aesthetic and auditory triggers specifically engineered to bypass rational thought because rational thought was seen as compromised by the platform wars and implant these new ideas, these new realities, directly into the collective unconscious. They were literally designing a shared delusion to be...
Are there any simpler examples, things we might recognize?
The sources actually give a couple of funny low-stakes examples to illustrate the basic principle. Remember the whole Szechuan sauce thing with Rick and Morty?
Yeah, a cartoon joke caused a real-world fast food frenzy. McDonald's actually brought it back.
Right. A fiction manifested a physical supply chain response. Or there was that bizarre brief thing where femboy Hooters, which started as just an internet meme, actually materialized as a physical place for a short time.
Okay, I see. Those were accidents, though. Viral
no.
weirdness.
Exactly. They were accidental hyperstitions. ZerOwOrk, according to the narrative, weaponized that exact mechanism. Deliberately, with massive resources and technological backing. They weren't just hoping for virality, they were engineering a new reality based on radical justice and abundance, and forcing the old systems to adapt to their fiction.
So let's talk about the big event, the grand intervention. This is where the theory becomes dramatic action, right?
Yeah.
Led by these anonymous two brothers and their key recruit, Sarah Chen.
Who becomes Sa. Yeah, and this wasn't subtle, it wasn't a slow leak, it was immediate global economic shock therapy.
The money redistribution, that was the big one.
Unbelievable audacity. It happened live during a broadcast, simultaneously all over the world, small sums of money.
Always under $1,000, right? To avoid immediate freezes.
Smart, yeah. Systematically moved from accounts with huge balances to accounts showing financial distress, instantly.
The psychological impact alone.
Yeah.
Just imagine.
Immense. And it wasn't just the money, it was the messages. Student debt. Wiped clean with the message. Your debt is not your fault. Rental properties. Temporarily taken over, managed by the algorithm for fairness, not profit.
It was like a declaration of war against the very idea of debt and scarcity.
Absolutely. But how did they do it? It wasn't just clever coding. They had tech that made them untouchable. And crucially, tech that seemingly let them alter reality directly.
This is the AEXUS Skull Oak. Sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
Pretty much. The sources describe it as a self-adapting photochromic metamaterial, quantum stealth.
Which means?
Which means, effectively, they could control their physical appearance and signature completely, become invisible, appear as someone else, blend into any background, bend light, total physical security and infiltration capability.
Okay, that handles the how they weren't caught part, but the reality alteration.
That, according to the narrative, came down to something even more radical. A liquid version of the Philosopher's Stone.
The Philosopher's Stone, like alchemy.
Exactly. Alchemical Mercurius. This is where the story fuses ancient mysticism with bleeding-edge quantum tech.
How did that supposedly work?
The sources describe it as a catalyst. This liquid substance, when used, supposedly created a direct link, like a Bluetooth connection to the DMT in your brain.
DMT, the psychedelic compound.
Endogenous DMT, yes. The idea is that the brain's own powerful psychoactive potential, unlocked and focused by this mercury substance, could be used to transmit intention.
So you're not just hallucinating. Your focus will, amplified somehow, is actually reorganizing matter.
That's the claim within the narrative. A focused, coherent intention directly manipulating atoms. Conscious manifestation technology, essentially. Turning human will into a localized physical law. That's supposedly how they pulled off those instantaneous massive changes to financial systems and property rights.
Mind-bending stuff, and it all led up to that final broadcast.
You're right. The symbolic climax. Sarah, operating from inside her AEXUS cloac, declaring the new era. That final, chilling message broadcast on every screen, every device. We are law. Your voice is US, our million masks of God.
The revolution complete. The system absorbed, hashtag TED 1.4, the utopian hubris, and the warning.
But then, after achieving this technological godhood, seemingly solving poverty, debt, inequality with algorithms, and matter manipulation, the ZerOwOrk narrative takes a sharp turn. It critiques itself.
The question shifts from how to should they have.
Exactly. The sources we looked at contain this powerful critique. It compares their whole project trying to systematize wisdom, engineer virtue, eliminate moral struggle through tech, compares it to the Tower of Babel rendered in quantum mechanics.
Why is systematizing virtue seen as the trap? If they made things better, what's the problem?
The problem, according to this critique, is that it removes the very thing that gives human life meaning. Choice, struggle, moral development. If justice and abundance are just programmed outputs, if there's no effort or risk involved in being good,
then human agency becomes meaningless.
Redundant. The argument is, the moment they believed they could engineer virtue, they fell into the deepest kind of hubris. They became perfect, benevolent dictators, but they stole our chance to grow, to struggle, to find meaning for ourselves.
So if they fixed all the external problems, the narrative suggests the real challenge became internal.
Right. The ultimate countermove wasn't another hack or another war. It was, according to one interpretation sources, a voluntary surrender.
A surrender of their power.
The voluntary abdication of their technological transcendence. This is apparently symbolized in the narrative by something called the 7 surrenders. The leaders consciously choosing to give up their omniscience, their matter control, their godlike abilities.
Wait. If they solved global suffering, isn't choosing to give that up kind of a betrayal? Choosing meaning over stopping actual pain.
That's the agonizing dilemma at the heart of the critique. It's brutal. Do you maintain a perfect engineered utopia where humans are essentially pets? Or do you restore the messy, painful, but meaningful reality of human struggle and choice?
They had to trade perfected utility for flawed freedom.
It seems so. The final question the ZerOwOrk narrative leaves you grappling with isn't about the tech, it's about us. It's how do we find meaning when we choose to be powerless?
Choosing to be human again, not gods. Wow, what a narrative arc.
A truly staggering piece of speculative fiction, or whatever it is.
Okay, let's take a breath. We are now completely shifting gears, leaving the world of ZerOwOrk, its global scale, its cybernetics, its revolutions, leaving all that behind.
Entirely separate territory now.
We're moving into the second body of work, the intensely personal internal landscape of day-night me, past-future me.
Right. So day-night me. This isn't about changing the world. It's about a single mind seemingly tearing itself apart.
Yeah.
Or maybe trying to hold itself together in a very strained way.
The core seems to be this split, right? Day me and night me. It sounds like more than just moods.
Oh, much more. The analysis we have suggests this isn't just confusion. It's described as a deliberate, though perhaps desperate strategy by the ego, an attempt to systematize its own suffering.
Systematize suffering.
By creating these rigid, false beliefs, delusions, essentially, the goal seems to be preserving a sense of moral purity for one part of the self, the day me.
So day me is the good one, the victim. Innocent.
Apparently, yes. All the darkness, the guilt, the violence, the bad thoughts or actions, those get outsourced, assigned completely to the night me.
Creating a scapegoat within your own mind.
A very fixed, very powerful scapegoat. And because this split is so absolute, the conflict between them isn't just internal thought, it manifests.
Oh.
The sources are clear. The detailed arguments, the back and forth dialogue between day me and night me described in the narrative, it has to be understood as a highly complex, sustained auditory hallucination.
Hearing voices, but structured as a dialogue between these two personas.
Exactly. And it's not just disembodied voices. The narrative apparently describes these voices as being projected onto the environment, onto tiny, insignificant details. The hiss of static from a speaker, the way paint is peeling on a wall, the shadow from a thumbtack. These become the anchors, the screens for this overwhelming internal conflict.
The mind is using the external world as a stage for its internal drama.
A very elaborate stage. Which brings us to the listener's specific concern. What if this is psychosis? Is this just madness?
And the critique in the sources addresses that head-on.
It does. And it suggests something paradoxical. The sheer ingenuity of this internal system, how complex and coherent the day-night narrative is, that very complexity might be what damns the subject.
Why? Would complexity suggest something profound is happening?
You'd think so. Because the complexity serves primarily to hide the underlying reality of delusion, this incredibly rich, meaningful, agonizing battle between day and night. If it's diagnosed simply as psychosis, it collapses.
Collapses into what?
Into what the sources chillingly call the suffocating banality of the padded cell. The profound personal meaning evaporates, leaving only the clinical fact of illness. The intricate narrative was a defense, a way to structure unbearable internal conflict, but ultimately it prevented integration. The mind chose division over wholeness.
Okay, so if the problem is a failure to integrate, we need a framework for understanding that. This brings us to the psychological analysis, particularly the Jungian perspective mentioned in the sources.
Right. Carl Jung's ideas about the structure of the psyche seem very relevant here. We have to start with the shadow.
That shadow, that's the dark side. The parts of ourselves we don't like or admit to.
Exactly. The repressed, hidden, often morally questionable parts of the personality. Things the conscious ego wants nothing to do with. The day-night split. That's almost a textbook example of failing to integrate the shadow.
Day me is the ego. Night me is the rejected shadow.
Precisely. Instead of acknowledging its own capacity for darkness, the ego splits it off, projects it onto this night me figure, and declares war on it.
And Jung argued that ignoring the shadow is dangerous, right? It doesn't go away.
It absolutely doesn't. It festers. If it stays internal but unacknowledged, it can poison your inner life, like in the day-night scenario. If you project it outward, well, that's where prejudice, scapegoating, and external conflict come from. You see your own rejected darkness in others.
But it's not just the shadow involved here, is it? The sources mention other figures.
Correct. The Anima and Animus. These are the archetypal representations of the contrasexual components of the psyche, the inner feminine in a man, the inner masculine in a woman.
And if these aren't integrated?
They also become autonomous, powerful forces within the psyche. Like the shadow, they can confront the conscious ego as these intense, split-off part souls.
And what effect do they have?
Crucially, the sources say they infuse the ego, or the split-off parts, with an unshakable feeling of rightness and righteousness.
Ah. So that's why both day me and night me feel completely justified in their conflict.
It would explain it. Both personas feel utterly morally correct because they're possessed by these powerful, unintegrated archetypal energies demanding recognition. Neither side can back down. They're locked in this righteous battle.
Which makes integration the only way out. The Jungian goal. What was the term?
Conjunctio oppositorum, the union of opposites. Or, more poetically, the sacred marriage.
Bringing day and night together. Ego and shadow. Conscious and unconscious.
Exactly. It's the core of the individuation process becoming whole, symbolized often by the mandala, that magic circle bringing order to chaos, or the alchemical hieros gamos, the sacred wedding that produces the philosopher's child.
Which psychologically is the integrated self, the new whole personality.
Yes, and the Jungian perspective is very clear. Forcing the ego to confront its own shadow, to integrate these powerful unconscious elements, it's incredibly difficult, maybe the hardest thing a person can do. But it's seen as the necessary path. Otherwise, you remain fragmented, at war with yourself. Hashtag 2.3 Consciousness, Mysticism, and Scientific Revolution, the cosmic context.
Okay, now the day-night narrative seems to take another huge leap. From internal psychology to, well, the nature of reality itself. It starts connecting ancient ideas, mysticism, alchemy, to modern physics and consciousness.
It really does. The personal crisis becomes a lens for these massive cosmological questions. The narrative seems to be searching for a unifying principle. The sources use the term PSUMOT.
Yes, you.
Potential singular unified model of things. Basically a grand unified theory, but maybe broader than just physics, something connecting mind and matter, the mystical and the scientific.
And the suggestion is that this search isn't new, that figures like Newton or Einstein were in a way, searching for the same thing.
That's the argument presented. How do you connect, say, the alchemist's quest with Einstein's? Well, look at alchemy. It wasn't just about turning lead into gold.
Right, it was spiritual, too.
Deeply. And central to it was the concept of mercurius. Not the element mercury, but a philosophical idea, a kind of permanent water, or arcane substance, believed to be partly material, partly immaterial, penetrating and sustaining everything. The ultimate connector, the unifying principle they were seeking.
So the alchemists, through their mystical or intuitive processes, were grasping for the same kind of unitary reality that Newton later sought with his ether, or Einstein with his unified field theory.
That's the provocative idea in the source material, that these quests, though different in method intuition versus mathematics and experiment, shared a common goal, finding the underlying unity.
And it wasn't just alchemy. The sources mentioned Descartes.
Right. René Descartes, the arch-rationalist. His entire philosophical system, the foundation of so much modern thought, was apparently inspired by a series of intense divine dreams he had.
So mystical experiences, divine inspiration, Gnostic ideas, alchemical pursuits. The argument is these non-rational sources have actually been catalysts for major scientific shifts, pushing thinkers towards a more unified, holistic view.
It certainly challenges the neat separation we often make between the rational scientific and the mystical intuitive. History might be messier, more intertwined.
This connects to another really big idea in the sources. Taking the concept of the logos, the word became flesh, more literally.
Yeah, moving beyond metaphor. The logos, in Gnostic and philosophical traditions, is the principle of divine reason, the ordering principle of the universe, the power of thoughts and words.
So the idea is, what? That words, information, syntax aren't just descriptions of reality, but somehow create it.
That's the speculation. If you accept the premise, popular in some physics circles, that information is fundamental, that reality is ultimately made of information.
Then the word, the structure, the command, the information itself becomes the creative force, an invisible informational soup out of which space-time emerges.
Kind of like a cosmic programming language. God said, "Let there be light," isn't just a story. It's the execution of a command that structures reality.
And the source material even offers a specific interpretation of the Big Bang based on this.
It does, yeah. A very geometric idea. Light from a higher dimension, projected through a single point into our dimension, the abyss. Inverting geometrically, preserving structure but expanding outwards. That's the Big Bang, an informational command manifesting physically.
So if language and belief can shape reality on that scale, it brings us back to ZerOwOrk's hyperstition, or the day-night me's intense internal reality. Are they tapping into this fundamental creative power of information or belief?
That seems to be the implication. One externalized, one internalized, but both potentially manipulating the informational substrate of reality, which leads directly to the most direct challenge to mainstream science in these sources.
The DMT Decoupling Protocol.
Right. This white paper, detailed in the sources, offers a hypothesis that completely flips the script on consciousness. It argues the brain doesn't produce consciousness.
Perceives it, anchors it.
Something like that. Consciousness is proposed as non-local, and the brain is the biological anchor point. The protocol describes the conditions under which consciousness might decouple from the brain.
Like in near-death experiences.
Or potentially intense mystical states, perhaps triggered by DMT. The paper proposes 3 key things need to happen together.
Okay, what are the 3 pillars?
First, the biochemical trigger. A massive flood of endogenous DMT in the brain sets the stage chemically.
Second,
A big surge of coherent gamma-band electrical activity, high-frequency brainwaves associated with peak experiences, intense focus.
and the third piece, this is the really novel part.
This is the core of the quantum self hypothesis, a burst of cellular biophotons.
Biophotons, light from cells.
Ultra-weak light emissions that all living cells produce. The hypothesis is that this isn't just waste energy. A coherent burst of the cellular light facilitated by the DMT and gamma waves acts as the carrier wave.
The carrier for what?
For consciousness itself at a quantum level. This biophoton burst is supposedly what allows the decoupling of a non-local consciousness from its biological host.
So consciousness literally rides out on a beam of light generated by the brain cells under specific conditions.
Yeah, that's the radical hypothesis. It directly challenges the idea that consciousness is just an emergent property of complex neuronal firing. It suggests consciousness has an independent, perhaps quantum basis.
Tying it all back to the day-night me narrative. If consciousness isn't just brain activity, if reality is informational and malleable, then that internal battle, that sophisticated delusion,
It could be interpreted in a vastly different way, not just as pathology, but perhaps as a reflection of consciousness itself struggling with the nature of its own reality, a reality far stranger and more subjective than conventional materialism allows. The personal psychosis becomes a reflection of a cosmic mystery. Hashtag outro.
Wow, okay. We have journeyed through two incredibly rich and, again, completely separate narrative worlds today. On one hand, the vast external sociopolitical cyber revolution of ZerOwOrk.
Focused on hyperstition, technological power, systemic control, and ultimately the danger of pride, the hubris of trying to engineer virtue.
And on the other hand, the intensely internal, psychological, and ultimately cosmological drama of Dynami.
Exploring fragmentation, the shadow, the archetypal battle within, and the dangers of dissociation trying to systematize suffering by splitting the self, potentially touching on the very nature of consciousness and reality.
And we had to keep saying that these are distinct works, separate analyses. One doesn't explain the other. They're parallel deep dives.
Absolutely. But interestingly, both critiques, in their own way, seem to circle back to the idea of integration and limits. ZerOwOrk's ultimate challenge was surrendering godlike power. Dynami's challenge is integrating the divided self.
Confronting the shadow, as the Jungian analysis suggests. Acknowledging the darkness to become whole, which is never easy.
Perhaps the hardest task there is. So if we take that idea seriously, that the antidote to external control, like in ZerOwOrk, or internal chaos, like in Dynami, lies in internal consolidation and integration,
Then maybe that leads to our final thought for you, the listener.
yeah. Considering how powerfully belief and narrative, whether hyperstition or delusion, can shape perceived reality, how susceptible we might be to these informational structures, what concrete steps do you need to take in your own mind, psychologically, morally, to prevent your own internal complexity, your own potential for fragmentation from becoming the very thing that traps you?
Where does the fight for a coherent reality truly begin? Maybe not out there, but right here, inside.